sometimes I forget that we can't talk about some things like if kids were listening to our show, that we can't like be as free.
What do you want to talk about?
Santa.
What?
I knew she was going to say that.
That's fair. I mean, I guess you could give a real warning, like, hey, heads up. I'll say this is about Santa, and I love Santa. In your home, it seems like Santa writes different for each house for some reason. I don't know why he changes it up to like,
right.
know,
he's uniquely gifted.
He's very uniquely gifted. Home. In your home, did Santa have a weirdly feminine hand when it said from Santa, or was it pretty like
love
standard?
You, XO, Santa.
Yeah, did he dot eyes with hearts, or because I remember that was, to me, early on, something I was like, this is interesting.
You know,
I've never seen a grown man write this way, and Santa's great that way.
With a little heart.
He's got a lot of flair, but I just didn't know in your home if it was the same situation.
I'm surprised instead of a heart, he didn't like at your house put a little Christmas tree.
Or a snowflake. Yeah.
Or a little snowflake.
Lots of ways.
One time, it was Christmas, and Santa I got pom-poms, asked for pom-poms for Christmas, because in our time growing up, being a cheerleader was the thing.
Wow.
And so he dropped one off the sled, and he wrote me this whole letter about how he had so many toys, and one of the pom-poms dropped off the sled.
So Santa left you one pom-pom.
And he left one pom-pom.
So just a pom. Is it just a pom at that point?
One pom.
When we were little at my dad's house, we set up a video camera to catch Santa. And so this is like a couple weeks later, we actually get to watch the video. And we're watching the video, and Santa comes in the house, and he, for some reason, strangely, the presents are in a Walmart sack. And so he puts all the presents down, and then he literally shoves the sack in the couch cushions. And as we're sitting there, we pull it out, and it was still there. I was like, Santa, you went through a lot of trouble. Just a few details he could have kind of followed through on.
Santa's working with Walmart.
It's wonderful. A magical season, and we may be talking about it a little bit more on the show today, but do you want to go ahead and get started with
Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to the Almost Amazing podcast from the City Rise Network. Hosted by Jennifer Dennis and produced by me, Justin Kello, we're a podcast that was supposed to be focused on parenting, but we've kind of lost the plot along the way. Honestly, we don't know what this podcast is about, but we talk to incredible people who love Jesus, and our hope is to provide encouragement and fun whenever possible. If our lack of clear direction bothers you, we apologize, but no one is making you listen to this podcast, unless you're married to Jennifer. Andy, thanks for listening.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Almost Amazing podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to introduce you to our guests. We've got great things to talk about, so welcome. Justin.
Hey.
How's it going over there?
Just thinking about how your mic is too high.
Oh, well.
Anyway, things are good. We just got back as of recording from Thanksgiving, so we're kind of entering into our Christmas season. But I just wanted to know, what was your Thanksgiving like? Anything chaotic? Anything crazy?
Nothing too chaotic. We went to Florida to spend a few days with my family, and that was great. We had Thanksgiving.
Can you clarify for me? You did not grow up in Florida.
I grew up in Laurel, Mississippi, and then when I was so my whole extended family, Laurel, Mississippi.
Okay.
My mom, dad, all of their sides of the family, everyone, Laurel, Mississippi.
Okay.
When I was 14, my whole family picked up
immediate,
my immediate family, my mom, dad, sisters, and me, picked up and moved to Pensacola, Florida.
Wow.
Which is basically like LA, Lower Alabama.
Oh,
it is right there next to Mobile, Alabama.
Okay.
And it's beautiful beaches. Yeah. But we moved there when I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
So that's where my mom and dad still are. And both of my sisters still live there with their families. Okay. So yes, I mean, we have some extended families left in Laurel, like my aunt and her husband, Eddie. They're still in Laurel, but
when you visit family, you're going to Florida.
I go to Florida now.
Okay.
So so my parents live up in the area, kind of north of town a little bit. So it's just sort of nice, wooded, easygoing. Mm-hmm. It's really lovely.
Right. Do y'all go to the beach when y'all go?
We do in the summer or on spring break. We definitely go down there.
Was it cold there right now?
Yes.
Oh.
It was cool while we were there. It was in the 40s.
Cold snap came through, yeah.
It was a cold snap.
I bet the week before you could have been at the beach.
So my dad loves to set things on fire. If there's ever a problem, one of my dad's first solutions is just to set it on fire.
Burn it.
Let's burn it. Put it out on the burn pile.
Wow.
There's always a burn pile going.
Okay, yeah. My dad didn't have like a burn pile. Yeah.
It could be like someone's couch, It could be anything. So when at night he goes, hey, you guys come on over tonight. We're having a fire. And you're just like, there's no telling what my dad's going to set on fire.
Right.
But when I was little, when I was about 5 years old, I remember my dad had to burn like a field down because it was drier weather and he didn't want it to set fire or whatever. So he pours gasoline all over this field.
As you do.
And we're just watching.
Reasonable.
My sister and I were 5, 6 years old. And I still remember we're just watching dad like pour all this stuff out. And it's not a big field. So through my years growing up, we were around fires all the time, like enjoying a fire at night. So while we were in town and the weather was cool, we several times got to go out and sit in front of a fire. And I could sit by a fire and watch it forever.
I do. Here's where I struggle. I do like sitting by a fire. I hate the smell of smoke. Oh,
you don't even like outdoor fire smoke?
No.
What?
Like if I'm driving by a fire outside, I got to close the vents on the car. Like I was like, I cannot stand the smell of smoke.
Get out.
So like a little campfire for like, marshmallows isn't bad, but like a big bonfire, or if the smoke is blowing right into my clothing, like, I hate the smell of it. I hate it.
I never even thought about that as a thing.
It must be something weird in my brain. Like I just can't handle that, but I hate it. It makes me sick.
I will say I'm not really great because they decided obviously to get the marshmallows out. And you know how I feel about s'mores. Not a fan. I do not like.
A lot of work, a lot of mess.
A lot of mess. No one ever has any wipings around to help make it better, nor any liquid to get it down your throat or no cleanup. Yeah. And someone always, and then they've got chocolate melted on everything you've used.
Everything's sticky.
And not to mention the 4-year-old, the 3-year-old who should not be involved is now just wielding a long stick with the flaming, on the end, waiting for it to fly off and smack you in the face. Right. But we were doing marshmallows and they roasted me, no pun intended, so hard about how terrible I am at roasting marshmallows. Apparently people don't like them black. They don't like them crispy.
That's not true. Some people really like them burnt. I will say the mistake you make with marshmallows is if you burn them too fast, the inside's still cold. That's what you gotta roast it a little bit. And then if you want the burnt on it, you gotta burn it at the end.
It is, I think, I guess a nuance, a little bit of a skill. So I got some.
I like s'mores. I mean, I agree with you that they're messy, but I am in favor of s'mores. I think they're a pretty clever treat and so specific to a certain, like you can't just go to the store and buy a s'more. Like it's got to be
true. It's an experiential food. I mean, it is the number one experience food. I can't think of anything more uniquely qualified for an outdoor fire.
It's so good.
But I do think that the people who are like, let's do s'mores are not the people who are
cleaning up from the s'mores.
Thinking, let's do this well. Those people never are the same person. Right. Let's bring something to drink out here. Their mouths are going to be so dry.
Yep.
Nope.
I love that. I love holidays because of food. That's the only, not the only, but the biggest thing to me is special food. So food that you can't get any other time.
So what was your favorite Thanksgiving food? What is that for you?
So my family makes a sweet potato casserole that is better than anyone else's family sweet potato casserole. And listen, I know people assume, well, no, we can't be my family. I don't think you understand how good this is. Like the topping is a mixture. It sounds crazy, but a mixture of like Special K cornflakes and like sugary stuff and marshmallow. It's unlike anything you've ever tasted. And it's so good. It's the best.
So I did make a dessert for a new dessert, pralines. I made pralines.
So like pecans. And like what's the sugary substance? Is it just caramel or
butter, sugar? And kind of caramelizes, then you put the nuts in it. And I made it with me by myself. I was so proud.
Well, there's some families that do candy making for the holidays. Like they get together and they make candy.
We make candy.
Oh, y'all do that. We don't do that. But I think it'd be cool.
You guys do that.
I think it'd be cool.
It's cool. It's delicious.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the food for me is a big part of the holidays. Like we did a kind of crazy road trip. If you follow me on social media, you saw that every time I'm with a group, I make them take a picture, which for a while I was really self-conscious about. And then people started dying, and I was like, okay, I don't feel so bad anymore. Get in this picture. Like, when I first started taking these group photos, I felt really like I was being a nuisance. But it was really important to me. I was like, I want to take a picture of all these people that I don't get to see that much. And then as people started passing away, I was like, okay, no, this is for real, guys. We got to take this picture.
This is important.
Not to be the Debbie Downer, but we do not know who is going to be here next year. So
that is pretty Debbie Downer.
Let's take this photo. I don't say it that way, but so if you've all messaged me, you saw a lot of pictures because we had basically 3 different Thanksgivings, because we started with my dad's family in Waco, and then we stopped by my stepmom and her family, and then finally my mom's side. So
wonderful.
We had a lot of good time, and the weather was perfect for it. It was cool but not rainy, and it was incredible.
I love those wonderful days with family. And today we continue in our family theme with our host. Well, with our guests.
Their guests.
We continue on with our family theme with our guests that I'm excited to talk to you about. So a few days ago, I don't know if you know this, but in the mornings I'll run by Walmart in a tizzy to pick up something, grab something, and I run into our guest today, and we get to visiting about our lives and our children, her children, my child. And I realize as I'm walking away, we have to have her on the show. She has raised 3 amazing women. Mm-hmm. And today, please welcome Julie Jenkins.
Hooray!
Welcome, Julie. And I thought, who better to talk to about raising girls than Julie Jenkins?
I know 2 of the 3. I came after Brooke was already gone, but both your younger girls were in student ministry with me. Really fun, incredible girls. Totally different. You know what I'm saying?
Very different.
Vastly different, but so fun and so cool. And recently we're getting ready for our series called Great, which is about the Great Commission. And you also shared a testimony, and I get to see all these things before they're published because I'm part of the process. And your story is really powerful. You talk specifically about your grandma and her commitment to prayer and the testimony of her. So not only are these great kids, but I can't wait to talk about your faith history and that sort of thing. So I'm pumped you're here today.
Well, awesome. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
Yes. So let's dive right in. Girls, I hear very often, are the hardest to raise. Have you heard that as well?
I have heard that, and I have lived that.
So you agree. When they say girls are harder, amen, right?
Totally.
I don't know. I feel like if you want your house still standing, I think guys can be a little rambunctious.
Here's how I've heard it said. I've heard it said that girls are easy to begin with, and then it gets hard. And boys are hard to begin with, and then it gets easier. Because yes, boys as young, they're wild, they're rambunctious, they break things. Girls in general, of course not always, but they're a little bit less chaotic as younger years, a little bit less fighting. But then as they get older, the girls' issues become way more complicated, and the boys' issues become way more simplified. And so it kind of flips.
So you say that you think this is true, raising girls is harder. What makes you think that?
I would agree mostly on that, the fact that they're pretty easy when they're little, but that's because mom is controlling everything in the situation, whether it's play dates or their activities. Middle school, I really think is the hardest. After middle school, high school, and college, it has been such a fun time. But middle school, I didn't even like my own kids when they were in middle school because I worked in middle school with the youth. And realized real quick after I got through with Brooke in middle school, I wanted no part of that.
Right.
So that was the part, I would say, the years that were the hardest. And because my girls are so spread apart in age, I always seem to have someone.
You lived it for 12 years.
I did. It felt
so how far apart are each of your girls?
So 4 years in school.
Oh, nice. So that is kind of a little break.
Yeah.
In between. So I remember meeting, I believe, Mallory. I've never gotten to know Brooke as well because Justin, I came afterwards, but I met Mallory and Emily later, and they're both just amazing girls. I guess my question is, when you were starting to parent, what were some of the things that you relied on, or some of the decisions you guys made early on? This is how we're going to do this. This is our goal. This is our plan.
My number one goal is I wanted them to love the Lord their God with all their heart, soul, and mind, and love others as themselves. If I could do that, that would be successful to me. And so that began our goal, as parents. And then obviously the prayer and praying for your children is just the key to success in anything, because you can just rely on the Word of God, because there's going to be difficult times. I mean, we went through some really difficult times. And if it wasn't for my foundation in the Lord and my faith, I wouldn't have been able to work through that.
Now, based on your story you shared, correct me if I'm wrong, you either didn't become a Christian or didn't start taking your faith seriously until you were already a mom.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
What was that moment like, or why did you transition that way? What happened?
Great question. So when I was 9 years old, prior to that, we went to church some, but it wasn't a regular thing we did as a family. And we had moved to the South, to Alabama, and we started attending a Baptist church there. And I heard the gospel. I knew the difference between heaven and hell. Sign me up for heaven.
Right.
I want nothing to do,
Yes, yeah.
And it really was fire insurance is what it was. I knew I wanted it. And I knew I was saved because we're sealed by the Holy Spirit, but it just truly was not a lifestyle for me. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't until we were married and I had Brooke, and my husband was involved in this men's study. And, we went to church faithfully. And I really was kind of annoyed with him because he was flourishing and I wasn't. Mm-hmm. And it was very frustrating. And he was like, why don't you go to this women's retreat? And I went to this women's retreat, and it happened to be on prayer. I already had the foundation of my grandmother, and it just transformed my life. And it became more of a relationship.
Wow. I love those, that one event or one moment or one spot that completely flips everything.
As an aside, the Women's Winter Retreat is coming up. If you want to learn more, cityrise.org/women. We'll be putting on information in the next couple weeks about that. Are they leaving town this time? I don't know, but either way, it's going to be focused on freedom. It's just,
good.
I say that because coming from student ministry, a lot of kind of Ebenezer moments happen on retreats and in big nights. And some people are skeptical about those, but I think when you get away or when you take a pause, even if it's in town, for extended study and fellowship where you're being intentional, things like that can happen. I mean, you can have those like literally life-changing experiences on a retreat or at a night of worship or in a Bible study. Like that's huge. So I always want to make sure that we share those opportunities because they really do play a key role in forming our faith.
It's so true. And that's the only time you really have that time because, at church, you're in your group, you're in your small group, then you're hunting down your kids, you're trying to get to the car, where are we going to eat, who's all meeting where.
Right.
And so to have that in between time, even if it's walking from one spot to the next, time you don't usually get, it's so powerful.
Right.
And it can really change. So you went to prayer retreat and it changed everything. And then you just started living kind of a different life, a relationship with Jesus rather than this is sort of our lifestyle or this is our culture.
Absolutely.
And so did you always want girls?
No, actually, I really wanted all boys and thought I would have all boys because I love sports. I broke my leg playing intramural football in college.
Wow.
I just assumed I was going to have all boys. And God said, guess what?
Wow.
Surprise.
Nope, not at all. So when you, as we all do, we hit these spaces with girls, especially now with social media. Let's begin there. Like you were raising your girls in the middle of social media beginning. I mean, I remember when Instagram started and we thought it was like share pictures of your crafts.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was at first.
It was like this really simple, like we just share our pictures.
Or it was, it was photos of like scenery and photos of like your life, not you. It was a lot
so
of
benign. And so like, of course you can have Instagram. And then good gracious. So like you guys were probably in the middle of the hype or towards the beginning of it. What were some things you did for your girls?
So one thing, and this was off the cuff, on the go parenting for sure. And so the rule was in our home, if you had social media or an app of that sort, then I had to be your follower. So they didn't have the option of leaving me out.
Right.
I promised them I would not solicit following their friends. If their friends followed me first, great, then I'd follow them back. But I didn't want them to be embarrassed but that I had to be able to see what they were posting.
Right.
they couldn't have their phones in their room at night. And I would periodically just randomly check their phones.
Mm-hmm.
So I could look through their DMs. I could, check all their different social media. Is that 100% foolproof? Absolutely not. I mean, nothing is, even if you don't let your kid have a phone, they're going to have access to social media,
Right.
Whether it's they can log into an account on their friend's phone,
Right.
they can log into a computer somewhere, or they're going to get access to it. So it's a lot of communication, open dialogue. Even when some pictures were being posted on Instagram that were a major legal issue, and it was having the conversation with the child of, if you receive a photo, you need to let me know because you can be in trouble with the law over this.
Right.
And so it was just constant communication.
I think that's a really good word, is keeping the communication open, and maybe not immediately seeing the app as just straight terrible. No, I really struggle with this because what I see happening is parents are like, we're just not doing that app. You're off that app. And then your kids' friends, they're all on maybe this app. One is Snap, which we all like. Snapchat's terrible because your stuff goes away. Huh?
I hate Snapchat.
It's the worst, but they're all using it.
They are.
And so now your kid is not being invited. They don't know what's going on. They're not connected.
Oh, they're
to
on it. Well, they can create an account on their friend's phone, so their friend can log out of their Snapchat, and your daughter or son can use their phone and log into an account.
I agree. There truly is only so much you can do. And that's with anything. That's with adults too. There's only so much you can do to help someone be accountable. There's only so much. If someone wants to lie, they're going to lie. And so, our kids, we don't have to teach them how to lie. That's something that we all are born with. Is for some reason, this sin nature allows us to be deceptive. And so as they're growing, even the best kids are going to be deceptive in some ways. And that's why I think the communication is huge, is not only like you said, hey, this is going on with the other kids with these photos. Just know, like some parents would be like, I'm not gonna talk about that. My kid's not gonna be doing that. It's like, no. I'm not, you weren't oblivious. You're like, hey, if this is ever your situation, if someone is sending you stuff like this is what you need to do. I think it's having the parameters, but also being realistic. Like if you get out of my parameters, like this is what you need to do. It's almost, I think it's every situation. It's like, okay, I don't want you at these parties. If it gets to this point, this is what you have to do. Like, and,
absolutely.
It's like,
and I would tell
more
them,
realistic.
If you can't call me, call Tim Yeager.
Yes. Call a youth worker. Yes.
Have them call, mentors. I'm okay with that. That won't get my feelings hurt.
Right.
But you have to communicate that.
Yeah.
You have to, it's like, why do we practice fire drills? Because you have to know what you need to do. So you have to have these conversations, and conversations a lot of times on the same thing with your children.
Right. That's huge.
And continual. And I think getting back to the prayer thing, this is a relationship, and it is so powerful to bathe your children in prayer, just to pray over their relationship with the Lord, their safety, the people that they're with, their future, the plans, the doors, the protection, and just lifting them up. And at the same time, being really realistic. I also see a little bit of a trend of parents parenting so much out of fear. And I feel like sometimes we lose the relationship because we are so focused on the fear that there won't be complete honesty, that there'll be some disrespect. And so what do you say to those parents who are probably leading so much out of fear that it's hurting their relationship with their kids?
Nothing good comes out of fear. So I think that we cannot prevent everything. Mistakes are going to happen. And it's trying to teach our children and help them as much as we can, whether it's through prayer and the people we let them surround themselves with. But what do they do when the mistake happens? Like I had two best advice. One was from my grandmother and one was from my father. And it was when I was 16 years old, and I ran the family car into the neighbor's house.
Oh, wow. Lie. Yep.
Wow.
And my mom was at home. My dad obviously was at work. And my mom doesn't handle stressful situations very well, but my dad was very strict, very firm, and he had a voice that I was a compliant child, but that voice would snap me into shape. And so it was very intimidating. And I was like, I'm dead.
Mhm.
This is the end. This is how it ends
end.
right here.
And so I screamed for my mom to come out and see it. It was one of these driveways in Alabama because we had a daylight basement. So it was like really steep, and then it curved around this brick wall, and I was supposed to back it out and pull it up in this nice Ford LTD station wagon with the wood paneling.
Yeah.
And my dad, I kept getting too close to the wall and it was scaring me. So I'd go back down and I would get back, and I kept going back and forth. And I'm like, Dad said, you got to give it some gas to get it up.
Oh no.
I must have had it in drive, but thought I had it in reverse with my little sister in the back seat. And before I knew it, just like everybody says, slow motion, hit the house. It bounces off, run over the air conditioners completely.
Wow.
Like only the cement foundation was there and the gas meter.
Oh.
And into these trees down in our yard that kind of went downhill. And so I got out and I got my sister out and I'm like, it's going to explode because I could smell the gas.
Oh, yeah.
And so I grab her, this was before safety belts too.
Right.
And I'm trying to run up the hill. We fall, cover our heads because it's going to explode because that's what happens on TV when you're 16
Yeah,
Sure,
years old.
right.
And my mom never came out. And I'm like, well, I'm not going in to tell her. I'm just going to scream and let her come see it. Fortunately, my neighbor saw it. He'd already called the fire. And so everybody came out and checking the car and checking his house. And everybody's in our family room. And I vividly remember sitting on the couch and my mom coming in and saying, your dad's on the phone. Just a pit in my stomach. I'm scared to death. And he goes, are you okay? First thing, yes, sir, I am okay. Second thing is, do you understand how powerful a car is? Yes, sir, I do. He goes, that's all I need to know. He never said, are you kidding me? What were you thinking? Do you know how much this is going to cost us? Our insurance is going to, none of that. And it was the best advice of mistakes are going to happen. So now what do you do to learn from it?
Right.
And move
What have you
forward.
learned?
Yeah.
Move, because I was like, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry. He knew I was devastated. He knew I was sorry. He
Right.
knew I didn't mean to. And he just wanted to know, was I okay? And how can you learn from this and move forward?
I think I love that in that moment he offered you a quiet grace.
He did.
And sometimes that's a much more powerful teacher than the getting in trouble.
Absolutely.
Mercy and grace can be incredible teachers. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to give the speech. We have to give it all the way to the end. We have to hold, but sometimes grace and mercy can be really powerful teachers as well.
Very powerful.
Because you'll never forget that moment.
I won't. I haven't. And I do that with my own kids and realizing, okay, this has happened. Now, how can we learn from it? Let's not waste it. What can we learn from it? And then move on.
Well, so what was the other piece of advice from your grandmother?
So my advice from my grandmother was just how she lived her life. And even though we weren't really involved in church, and for a while when we lived in Minnesota, we were really CEOs, Christmas and Easter only families. But I would go and visit her in the summer. And I was 5 years old. And I can remember coming down the steps in my nightgown as a 5-year-old really early in the morning. And I walked into the dining room and the table at the end, she had it pulled out, not to sit in, but to kneel in front of. And she had letters and pictures of missionaries and her family. And her Bible was open. And she'd be there as a kid, seemed like hours. But it probably was a good hour. And how important prayer was in the time with the Lord. I could see that. There was no conversation between her and I in that. But I saw how important prayer was, and I wanted to implement that into my life. But it took me so long to finally get there. But I got there, and it has just transformed my life because she would always say, Lord willing. Are you coming to visit for Thanksgiving? Well, Lord willing. Well, we've already got your plane ticket. Of course you're coming. But she always put everything in the Lord's hands.
That's good.
Best advice.
Man.
Yeah, I love that and something I struggle with. So like I want to put personal disciplines on display with my kids so they can see it like that and have those stories. But at the same time, the chaos they bring into a room makes it impossible for me to actually execute the discipline. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so it's cool your grandma's in that space. She was getting up early, obviously, and I'm just not an early guy. So I'm still trying to find that space where like, I want my kids to have those memories and reading my Bible. But right now it has to be really private because they're chaos as soon as they walk into a room.
And when my girls were little, it was before they got up. But I will say what you can do, because this is my prayer journal, and I have taken different things from things that I've learned and adapted it throughout, I like that idea, and I would bring it in. But one of those things that I was able to talk about with my girls, because I had one child who was a liar, and it became like a habit, like silly things. Have you brushed your teeth? Yeah.
Right.
Why is your toothbrush not wet? Oh, I dried it with a washcloth. I mean, like crazy stuff. And I came up because I think it was on KSVJ one time I heard where somebody said they had a word for their child that they would pray. So I have a word for my kids that I pray for them that year. A lot of times the Holy Spirit will kind of give me that word. It could be an area like lying that I know that so her word was truthfulness. And it was focusing on the verses in the Bible. The Lord detests lying lips, but delights in those who are truthful, and teaching that to her. And so while they may not have seen me with my Bible open and praying, they could come and see what their word was.
Right. Cool.
And then one time it was Mallory. She's like, well, what's your word? And I was like, well, I don't have a word. So like 5 years later, I had a word for myself. And it's been really neat to see how, I miss my quiet times sometimes. It happens. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect because nobody's perfect. But I can, when I'm out running my errands or I'm in that carpool line, I can pray for my kid for that word.
Yeah, that's huge.
Right.
And I needed it to be in little bites of how I could pray for them. So like Mondays, I'll pray something specific that it's written down exactly what I'll be praying for them, whether it's their salvation or once they accept Christ, that we continue to be sold out for Jesus only. But those, like maybe Monday's prayer, and then I have Tuesday's prayer, because if you think about all the prayers you want to pray for your children, you'd spend the whole day.
Sure,
and we don't have the whole day. So how could I break it up into little nuggets? And it's not things that I've come up with. The Bible says there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
And I take hold of that verse and I just take nuggets from everybody and put it together to what would work for me.
Yeah.
Well, and God is so faithful. He hears our prayers. And sometimes we move on in the moment, but those are real moments with God, and he hears us. Last summer, somebody said that you should write your prayer request down. Obviously, we've heard that in a prayer journal. And for the first time ever, I started to circle it every time I prayed it. So for this season, I would be, probably not a long one because I'm terrible with discipline. You guys, if you know me, you know that. So I circled and been really committed in this season. And my sister, I was praying for her, like all these things. And I just sort of stepped out of that and got off course and didn't even come back to that same journal. And a few months later, my other sister made comments about Stephanie's just having a great season. There's some great things happening. And I opened back up to that page, and it was all of these requests that God had answered. And I was like, God, you are so faithful.
good.
Even when I've like lost the journal, I moved on to macrame, like those moments with God are so, so powerful, and he doesn't forget. Thank goodness,
doesn't.
right?
Amen.
Amen. So for new moms that are listening to us, what are some of your encouragements to them? Hey, this is what it took me forever to learn. This is what, if I could just have you learn it immediately.
I would say probably, obviously, praying for them as much as you can and praying over them. And sometimes do that out loud with them. Sometimes you can do that while they're asleep. Like if they're really going through a hard time, that was always a sweet thing. Praying over their room. There's lots of opportunities where you can pray in private for them and then also in person with them. So that would be my best advice. I would also say the one thing I had to really work on, and I'd actually give David a really hard time about this and kind of remind him, remember, they don't have the mind of a 50-year-old.
But who would want that? That's my brain. It's completely useless at this point.
That is so true.
Their brains are way better than our brains.
But I was like, you've lived life. They haven't.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we as parents know nothing according to them and what they think. So don't expect their responses and their actions to be like an adult.
Yeah.
And that was a good light bulb moment of, they're looking at this situation that seems horrible to them. And we're like, that's not a big deal. You're going to be fine.
It's hard.
No, you want to validate that because that's their life.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And one of our biggest jokes in our family right now, when something could be that same situation and we're making this bigger than it is we'd be like, remember, this is like middle school drama, the musical that the middle schools do, and you don't get the part that you want, and you're devastated, and you cry, and you think the world is coming to an end.
Right.
And now the girls, as they've all gotten older, they realize, that wasn't that big of a deal. Who cares
it's
about
like
that?
I see that now.
Yeah.
And so that's even kind of the word that we remember, that this may be like the middle school musical.
How would you, and this is my last probably question
Jennifer
on
needs a lot of help with parenting. She's got a lot of questions. She can't.
obviously. No.
She has a wonderful daughter who I have been in the youth
I
with.
know. Olivia's
I
awesome.
love
She
Olivia.
loves Julie. Okay, so my question is, how do you give them autonomy? When do you start allowing them to make more decisions? I think that that's one of the most important things you can do is give them decisions. But a lot of times we're busy. We have crazy schedules. It's great to be in a system. So sometimes we can get to the place where we're not giving them any decisions. So how did you guys give them decision making to help them grow up a little bit in a safe place?
Excellent question, because going to a private college, I saw a lot of kids come there who had no opportunity to fail at home. And they failed miserably in college because they had no rules or no boundaries. So you definitely want to start giving them opportunities. For me, I don't know that I handled it the best way. Probably was more of a conversation, or whether it was alcohol or talking about drugs or sex, it was, what would you do in this situation? Or, this is really hard. When you have to go ahead and plan ahead of time what you want to do. So what are you going to do in this situation? Or when something may be a huge mistake that somebody they knew made, or maybe even one of their friends made, it would be having that conversation of, well, what would you do? Because then you can start to see their maturity, and you can start to see, okay, yeah, they can handle that situation. They should be making the right choices at that time. And it's a rein you kind of let go a little bit. And then sometimes you have to bring it back in a little bit because they are going to make mistakes. But you would much rather them do that under your own home and under your roof than elsewhere. We still had the same rules. It wasn't like I was letting them make choices and break the rules. But it was, how do they start making these choices for themselves? And I think because you start that when they're little, they knew what my rules were, what our rules were for them. Like, they knew they couldn't wear something to church that was shorter than where their fingertips ended. That was non-negotiable. So when they started buying their own clothes, like they could send me a picture and I'd be like, let me see the back. And they're like, no, it touches the fingertips, it's below my fingertips.
Posture all the way up.
And so, it's just a constant dialogue and communication. A lot of times I would use maybe even a hot button on something I might hear on Good Morning America, or some news that came out, and I would say, oh, I heard this. What do you think about this? Or what would you do?
Right.
And it's just, again, constant dialogue and conversation.
I had just a little bit of a light bulb moment just now. So Matt Chandler preached a sermon one time about decision making in a marriage, and we're like, ideally you're on the same page all the time, whatever. But that's not going to happen.
I wish that happened,
right.
But it doesn't.
And the way God has designed it, the way we teach it, is like there comes a certain point where it's like, if you're not on the same page, you got to go a direction. You got to choose, and can you not make it the rest of this show? It's gonna cut back to you in a completely.
I'm going to explain. I took off. I'm going to visibly start sweating. I'm burning up. It's so cozy in here.
Okay.
And at the beginning, it was like a hug, but now I'm gonna need medical attention.
Okay. What I want to say is this. So Matt Chandler, he was preaching a sermon about this idea of like making a decision in marriage. And he said, so that when there does come a time where there's a decision I absolutely have to make he says, for almost any decision that could go either way, I'm deferring to her. I want to, that's how I find the middle ground is like, there will come a decision that if we're on the same page, he has to say, this is what I want to do, or I feel like we should do. But for every other thing, he's like, I really want her to be the leader. I want her to lead that. And I think kids can do that as well. It's like for the decisions that aren't that big of a deal, let them decide that and just be like, okay, whatever. Yep. So that when there are big decisions, like, no, you really aren't going to do that. And I'm not going to let that happen. As a parent, if they've had this, like, all these other places they have full control over, they feel like they have the control over, I think the more small decisions you can give them that really don't matter, it's going to make it easier when I think you do have to put your foot down and be like, no, really, this is what we got to do. Like, you're not going to do it that way. And that's going to me, you can scaffold that over time. There's going to be bigger and bigger decisions. It's like, okay, do you play soccer or softball this season? Okay, well, what do you want to do? It's really up to you. There's not a wrong choice here. I defer to what you want to do. Whatever your choice you make, you're going to stick with it, but you're going to choose it. So I think that I'm going to start adopting that too, is like, if I see a decision that they can make and it's a safe decision, I'm going to go with whatever they want to do.
And you can even have parameters around that, because we would let them pick their sport, but it was like, well, you have to stick with it for a season.
Right. Yeah.
Or, you pick an instrument, you got to at least stick it out for a season,
right,
and not quit.
Right.
So yeah, we would absolutely do that. And even when Brooke, our oldest, was looking at where she wanted to go to high school, I asked her, if money didn't matter, location didn't matter, and friends didn't matter, where do you see yourself? Mm-hmm. And she broke it down to each school. I said, not that you get to make the decision,
right,
but she got to be a part of that decision, and it actually aligned with us. It was excellent. But
great.
you can have those kind of conversations with them on why instead of just,
this is what's happening. This is what we're doing.
Gosh, it becomes so exhausting to explain, but yes, you need to be disciplined and like, this is why, here's the reasoning. Like,
well, Julie, such great insight. This has been wonderful. And we're so glad to get to visit with you today. And so time now for our get to know you question. So my question is, now that you have 3 girls kind of out of the house, yes, and now you have a little bit more space to yourself, a little bit of time to yourself, what will be your...
How do I answer that question? This is a question that everybody's supposed to answer, and that's very specifically for her.
I already know my answer. I'm just thinking one day. One day.
I am in the trenches.
You are in the trenches.
I am in the trenches.
How do you see yourself using this newfound time called raising 3 children?
Yeah. Okay. So it is crazy because you think, but like, what did I do with all the time before kids? I constantly had that thought. It's like, what was I doing? Like, I can't even remember.
Not only
how I spent that
physical time, space, but mentally. You're freed up on so many different levels.
We'll go first though.
But we'll go first. Okay. And I'm guessing it's going to be me since I'm going absolutely first.
Yeah.
I think that I would like to re-pick up pickleball.
Right.
I really had
love pickleball.
You do? Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed it while I played it. I had a mild ankle injury. Mm-hmm. So I would like to go back down that road. I really like thrifting and like going to, I don't know what you call those, estate sales and things like that. Just I whatever I do, I want it to be out in community, like connecting with people, visiting with people. I don't know. I might go read for children. That might be fun.
Maybe. Yeah. That's great.
What about you, Justin?
For me, I will, when I have the time, when my kids are out of the house and I suddenly have more time for myself, one thing I miss being able to do is like Kristen and I would just like go away for a weekend. Mm-hmm. Just straight up like, hey, we lived near DC and there was a Phil Wickham concert 2 hours away. We're like, hey, we're just going to go spend the night and go this. Like that spontaneity is incredible. And it's something that I can't wait to get back, is this idea of like, there's something interesting 4 hours away. Let's go and spend the night and do it. Like,
okay, I want to back up on my answer because
you already went. You already went.
No, I don't want to do estate sales at all. I want to go see Phil Wickham at the top of the hat.
But yes, the spontaneity of being able to just go for a
Yes.
night somewhere.
We got to get rid of our dog.
Yes.
Julie, how about you? What would be your...
So first of all, I want to say so many times you hear about, oh, you're an empty nester. Are you crying? It's so sad. And I can't tell you how excited I have been about being an empty nester. And my kids know that.
Right.
And that's not because I don't love them, but our job as a parent is to raise them to be independent young adults who love the Lord with all their heart, soul, and mind, and love others as themselves. And if you do that, you send them off, you've done your job. And I'm kind of like, I love, like, I've gone on so many like little trips. It takes a lot, especially for the mom, to plan when you're gone, because it's not only how are you going to have time to get away, but you have to make sure so-and-so's getting here, how's somebody getting picked up,
Right.
this birthday party, whatever. It's a lot. I mean, you're exhausted just doing that. So the fact that I can just pick up and go and pickleball with friends, thrifting, all of that is fun. Just I can kind of be more in control of my schedule versus my children being on the schedule.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. Well, wonderful. Well, I did find out that the women's retreat is in town.
Great.
So I'm excited about that. And we do have Laura Seifert is speaking, which we've had her on the show.
Yeah. And the worship leader from the Night of Worship is back.
We'll have to have her back.
Well, the worship leader was a big hit for the Night of Worship early in the season. And so, yeah, if you want to sign up for that, it should be on cityrise.org/women either now or very soon. It's coming up in the first quarter of the year. So we're already getting ready to promote it. But
Yes, we are. And invite a friend.
Yeah.
True. Agreed. So thank you guys for listening. Julie, thank you for being with us. And Justin's going to tell us more about how to like the show.
Do things, yes. If you enjoyed the show today, we'd love for you to share it with somebody, send them the link, rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, just like it. That would be great. You can always email us at podcast@cityrise.org if you have people we should talk to. We have no shortage of incredible people in our church, but sometimes we just forget about people because our church is huge. And so if you know somebody both inside our church and outside our church that loves Jesus that we should talk to, please let us know.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you. We hope you've had a wonderful time.
What?
Hold on. We hope you've had an almost amazing time on the Almost Amazing Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Almost Amazing Podcast from the City Rise Network, based in Houston, Texas. City Rise is a partnership of church campuses, nonprofits, and missionaries devoted to lifting our city and the world by generously giving the gospel of Jesus Christ. For more information or to find a church campus close to you in the Houston area, visit cityrise.org.